I like to win fair. Most of the guys don't care how they win, fair or not, they just want to get the win.
One of the most accomplished and globally active arm wrestlers of the past decades, Krasimir Kostadinov is perhaps the very embodiment of a naturally strong and incredibly driven, ubiquitous athlete. Coming from a culture that values strength and arm wrestling, this puller had high aspirations and lofty goals. Although he was well on the way to conquer the highest summits in arm wrestling, as of late, he seems to have had several precarious stumbles in his career. I am the Arm Historian, and today I'll be your tour guide as we take a look at the rise and fall of Krasimir Kostadinov. If you enjoy my content and want to show your support, consider liking the video and subscribing to the Arm Historian. It helps the channel grow and shows me what kind of content you appreciate. Let's get on with it. Krasimir Kostadinov was born on the 4th of April 1988 and hails from the small town of Tutrakan in northeast Bulgaria, right at the banks of the Danube River, which separates it from Romania. As a child, Krasimir describes himself as having been active and mainly interested in football as far as sports go. At 7 years old, he would receive a present from his cousin, a present that would have large ramifications for the young Krasimir's future. On that day, he received a pair of dumbbells and found himself immediately drawn to them. From then on, he trained weightlifting nearly every day as a youngster, something that he quickly realized made him significantly stronger than his peers at the time. At 12 years old, Krasimir found another sport where he excelled in. Handball was relatively popular throughout Europe and beyond, and was recognized as an Olympic sport. It seemed the young Krasimir had a lot of potential in the sport, as he played it on a national level and was approached to be recruited into the national training program. These plans were quickly thwarted by his father though, as he understandably didn't want his, by then 15-year-old son, to travel to and stay at the nation's capital, Sofia, stating he was far too young for such an endeavor. Throughout these years, Krasimir's love for weightlifting and general fitness remained, and he developed a formidable bench press for someone of such a young age. In school though, the usual pastime was usually spent in another form, that of lunchtime battles of arm wrestling. Krasimir found himself to have a real knack for the sport and knew that arm wrestling was highly regarded in Bulgaria. He remembers watching the yearly Bulgarian champion event, which was nationally televised, an event where the 8 best arm wrestlers in the country would face off against each other in one big tournament. Krasimir decided to try his luck at the Bulgarian Nationals and competed in the junior division with little to no preparation. In this, his first tournament, he ended up getting 4th place on the left and 3rd place on the right hand. Only improving from there, it took Krasimir a mere 2 years of competitive arm wrestling to become the overall national champion of Bulgaria before the age of even 20. By this time, it was clear Krasimir was not only a natural contender in his own nation, but also on the international scene, competing and doing well in the European Championships. About his arm wrestling skills at that time, Krasi later would say that he understood what to do on the table immediately and found he just had to increase the strength in his fingers and wrist. He focused solely on arm wrestling strength training, specifically side pressure, back pressure, and wrist strength, which propelled him to be a formidable hook puller and presser. The other countless aspects of arm wrestling were secondary to Krasimir. After doing well on the European tournament scene, he got an invite to the National Pro League, the very league that had inspired him as a youth to try arm wrestling. He proceeded to do well in his first outing and ended up coming in 4th in the prestigious tournament. In 2007, Krasimir competed in the World Championships, which were coincidentally also held at Bulgaria that year. He got a victory in his very first match against a strong Ruslan Babayev, brother of the perhaps better known Rustam Babayev. At the end of the day, Krasimir made it all the way to the semi-finals, getting 3rd place in the 85 kg division on the right hand. Krasimir would continue to do well in several leagues and tournaments throughout the next years, accruing several national titles, as well as the crowning achievement of winning the 2009 European Championships 90 kg right-hand division. The tournament that year was held on Bulgarian ground, which must have made the victory taste that much sweeter to Krasimir. After the turn of the decade in 2011, Kostadinov competed in the WAF Worlds, that was that year held in Kazakhstan. he would end up coming in first place in the 100kg category on the right, beating a lethal Dmitry Trubin along the way, amongst other high-tier pullers. In 2012, Krasimir found himself competing in the Nemiroff World Cup. In this prestigious tournament, he managed to make it all the way to the finals in the open-weight category, only losing narrowly to a primed Andrei Pushkar, and eventually coming in second, a huge accomplishment in its own right. In that same year, he also had a super match against one of the top pullers of that era, Arsen Liliev. Krasimir came in as a huge underdog that day, but managed to surprise many spectators and fellow pullers. He defeated the Russian athlete in a very contested match, pulling out a narrow victory on fouls. Looking back, Krasi credits this match to be one of his biggest and most influential wins yet. He went on to compete in several editions of the Zloty Tour, NWAF European and World Championships, while relatively consistently doing well for himself in those tournaments. In 2015, during the WAF World Championships held that year in Kuala Lumpur, he managed to win the 90kg right-hand division. The year after that, he placed number 1 on the left 100kg division in the WAF Worlds. Throughout the past decade, Krasimir has also not shied away from super match opportunities, locally and abroad, accruing many notable wins over top pullers. Among several of them, even the legendary John Brezink. By 2016, Krasimir would face one of his most formidable opponents yet, in the now undisputed number 1 of the world, Levan Saginashvili. The two met during a match in the European Championships, and it was clear that Georgian Holak was, even then, already much larger than Krasimir. Nevertheless, the athlete slipped, and Krasi stopped Levan in the straps on the inside. From there, he worked on Levan in typical Kostadinov fashion, and fouled him out twice for the win. A year later, the two pullers would meet again, this time on the Zloty Tour. By this time, however, Saginashvili had filled out his frame even more and quickly got the better of the Bulgarian puller with an earth-shattering hit. Several years thereafter, Krasimir still maintained he could potentially beat the Georgian Hulk, an opinion he has perhaps changed by now. By the time 2018 rolls around, Krasimir got invited to appear on the international scene yet again. This time he got approached by the World Arm Wrestling League to participate in the WAL Supermatch series. At WAL 406, he faced the formidable North American powerhouse, Dave Chaffee. Krasimir managed to make Dave work for it a little in one round, but ultimately succumbed to the WAL veteran, 0-3. Even though the match turned out to be somewhat of a mismatch, Krasimir later went on to say he was the one fighting to get a match against Dave. This is just one example of his unrelenting drive to be the undisputed number 1, leading him to seek out some questionable matchups. Seemingly not dissuaded by his first loss in the WAL Supermatch series, Krasimir would go on to face another fearsome opponent at WAL 506 in the accomplished Brazilian-American Marcio Barbosa. This time, Krasimir's outing proved to be a little less one-sided, as the two had a true nail-biter of a match, with Marcio eking out a victory after a few contested ref calls and hard-fought battles. By the end of the decade, Krasimir had found a new training partner in the rising Bulgarian star Yordan Sonev. The two athletes decided to room together and focus solely on training. For an entire year, Krasi later recalled they did nothing else than sleep, eat and train. However, he would go on to explain that the training ended up being much more beneficial for Yordan than for him. Because of an age disparity, Krasimir felt his recovery time was too long compared to his younger countrymate, and as such he could not keep up without damaging his body in the process. The training must have had some effect though, seeing as in early 2020, Krasimir Kostadinov faced off against a much bigger Polish giant, Alex Kurdecha. In this grueling vendetta match, Krasimir showed real hardened elbow integrity and phenomenal side pressure, coming back from some incredibly compromised positions. And although some would go on to claim the victory was not fully earned, he won that day with a record of 3-4. After a period of relative inactivity, the bars of COVID were lifted and the world was greeted by another premier arm wrestling league. Engin Terzi's East vs West offered a battleground where all the best and upcoming talent from the arm wrestling world could spotlight their prowess. This of course meant that Krasimir Kostadinov couldn't refuse the opportunity to pull in its 3rd edition. As his opponent, Engin had chosen the super heavyweight Turkish puller Arif Ertem. Arif's blisteringly fast and ferocious top roll turned out to be too much for Krasimir to handle, leading to a visibly deflating 0-3 loss for the Bulgarian. Not one to be dissuaded easily, Krasimir subsequently accepted yet another invitation to the now premiere event. This time he would have as an opponent Levant's training partner and all-around Georgian top roll star, Irakli Zirakashvili. Irakli confidently took the victory that day, pinning Krasimir 3 times with an explosive top roll. In the summer of 2021, Krasimir also faced the Russian giant ice road trucker Vitaly Laletin in Igor Mazurenko's top 8 tournament. Even though he was confident to at least have a fighting chance, he quickly found out Laletin's frame and power was too much for him and lost the match convincingly. In the past, when the two had met on the table, Krasimir confidently beat Vitaly each time. Now, however, the roles were clearly reversed. Until this day though, Krasimir maintains that questionable ref calls occurred during the match and the two would still be competitive if they were to face each other again. At the start of 2022, Krasimir had an opportunity to pull the North American prospect Corey West in a super match. While facing yet another super heavy opponent of a certain pedigree, it turned out Krasimir was outgunned yet again and lost the match handily. In September of that same year, Krasimir faced off against the Canadian wild horse Matt Mask in the fledgling tournament We the North. Both athletes had been on a bit of a losing streak, which must have ramped up the pressure significantly. Matt Mask managed to break through Krasimir's stellar defense relatively easily and defeated our titular Bulgarian 3-0. More recently, as nearly every year before, Krasimir entered in the World Arm Wrestling Federation Championships. He ended up placing 5th on the left hand in the 100kg division and 1st on the right hand in the 100kg division. Although admittedly the competition in WAF of that year was relatively soft, Krasi's stellar performance proved he could still hang with the elite within his weight class. His recent entrance in the Russian AMC tournament arguably showed a similar fact, as he ended up with 1 win and 2 losses against some of the top 95kg pullers of the region. In recent years, Krasimir admits to losing a large portion of the drive he once had. A major influence to this supposed lack of drive is the lack of doping tests in large competitions, specifically the Nemerov Cup, which Krasimir always viewed as the ultimate decider for the crowning of the world's best arm wrestler in the past. Igor Mazurenko, the organizer of the prestigious tournament, was unwilling to institute stringent drug testing for his events. A fact that, according to Krasimir, made the playing field woefully uneven and stood directly in the way of him reaching his ultimate goals in the sport. It's safe to assume he holds similar views on many of the modern arm wrestling leagues. Krasimir's refreshing openness about his stance on the rampant use of PEDs in arm wrestling served as a guiding principle throughout the puller's career. Krasimir also has strong views on the King's Move, exclaiming that every time you hold an opponent solely on a bone lock, it should be an automatic foul. A view he shares with and was perhaps partially inspired by his good and longtime friend Engin Terzi.
I think that this thing should be not a joke, because I don't like this movement. And I think that every time you open your opponent's arm until the bone limit, it should be a win for you.
Yeah.
This is what I believe.
Kostadinov discounts any win gained by the King's Move as not a true match win. He goes on to explain that he likes to only win fair, a quality he holds in the highest regard during an arm wrestling match. This mindset probably also plays into Krasimir's aforementioned stance on performance-enhancing drugs. In the end, it can't be denied that Krasimir Kostadinov is not afraid to put himself out there and face any opponent that is thrown his way. One can't help but applaud his sheer determination and unflappable drive to become the undisputed number 1 in the world. Although he has risen to the highest echelons in the sport throughout his career, recently he seems to be falling just short of that ultimate goal. If this tenacious Bulgarian veteran of the sport decides to buckle down and focus on his own weight class, I'm sure we will see great things from him in the future. Thank you for joining me in this episode of The Rise and Fall. I hope you enjoyed it. Who would you like to see in the next episode? Let me know in the comments. And as always, a major shout out to the Armians and Fingerfolk for supporting me in making these episodes. Arm Historian, out.